Good afternoon and welcome back, ladies, gents and Pikachus. This is a personal response to Champakagoat, who's someone who's just commented. So I don't know this guy, never met him before, but he seems like a nice, polite gentleman, so I'm gonna tackle his comment. So I'll put the comment on screen so you can read it, but from memory, his position is God is evil because he randomly causes people to die. Nature is actually the reason these people randomly die, and because God is nature, or God controls nature in some way, therefore God equals nature killing people randomly, therefore God is evil. That was his position. So I said, please give me an example of where God randomly causes people to die, and we'll go from there. Because obviously if you make a claim like God randomly causes people to die, I don't think that's true. So I'm questioning the statement that you made within your proposition. I'm not saying that your proposition wouldn't work if it was proven to be true. I'm saying you are the one who has to demonstrate that it's true because I am questioning it. So you have to come up with an example either from the Bible, like I said, reference, source, chapter and verse, or you have to give me a real life example that I can see has actually happened of where God causes someone to randomly die, and then we'll go from there. But as I think, you will not find that example because there is no example of God randomly killing people. Even by way of nature. It doesn't happen. Nobody randomly dies because of nature. There's always some reason for it, either from their behaviour that's caused it, or from whatever the cause was. So, please keep in mind as well, I have had this same argument in various different forms over the last week, and the argument you're making is God is nature, nature is evil, therefore everything is evil, including you and I, and all animals and plants and sunny days and beaches and everything else that's in nature. Reality is evil. That is the argument. When you think it to its conclusion, that you are making. You are saying God creates reality, reality makes death, death is evil because it happens randomly, in your words, not mine. So therefore, everything in creation, life, death, and everything in between is evil. Therefore, God is evil. That's your proposition. Please correct me if I'm wrong. So let's go through that. How can reality be evil if we're having this discussion about it now? Surely there's a question mark, even in your head, because if you knew it was evil, you wouldn't be propositioning me with this is the reason why it might be evil. You'd be saying it's definitely evil, and here's a million examples to prove it. But I've asked you for one example of a statement within your possibility, your proposition, and you can't even come out with that. So as far as I'm concerned, I get where you're coming from, but factually, logically, the argument doesn't hold up, and therefore we can't say that that's a true statement you've made. God is not evil because of random occurrences in nature causing people's deaths. And also, until you can give me an example of where that happened, I don't actually think anyone dies randomly, either in nature or out. Nobody just dies for no reason. If that was the case, I could just drop dead now for no reason. There would be no consistency in life if that was true. But we know there is consistency in life, and actually we can rely on that consistency. We know people live around about to 90 to 100 years on average if they're healthy, and people who die prematurely to that principally are dying through medical health complications, murder or suicide, or misadventure, getting hit by a bus or something like that, or dying in a fire. But none of these things can qualify as being random. But just in case I've got it wrong, let's go through your actual comment. This is the comment that you gave me about an hour ago. You said, and I quote, "It is objectively bad to unalive humans at random, cause them to die. God designed nature and how nature operates, and nature unalives humans at random." So the conclusion is God equals nature, nature equals random, nature randomly killing people equals God. Conclusion is God is bad. And then you've said pretty easy line of reasoning to understand. It's objectively good for people to be alive and conscious because there's no reason without them for anything. Therefore, reality is good apart from God made it, so it's bad. And now we find out your proposition's not quite so simple as you made it sound. Because random means without reason or cause and cannot be explained by some other reason or cause later on. So completely unexplained, completely without reason or cause. But that isn't what you've described in people dying, because we can explain those. random doesn't even apply to a dice roll, because each dice has 6 on there. So if I throw 4, which is what I got there, this isn't a proper dice, that's something else. So I've got 4 dice, 6, 12, another 12 makes 24, so I've got 24 spots in total on my dice. If I throw them, likelihood is 2 dice are going to give me 7, the other 2 dice are going to give me 7. If I do it 100 times, the most likely result that I'm going to get in median is 14, 7 times 2. So even that's not random chance. What you're suggesting is people just for no reason at all, totally unexpectedly, which cannot be explained afterwards, just die, and then we're going to blame that on God. And I would argue that's a bad, faulty position that isn't driven by logic, that cannot be referenced or evidenced, and that you are essentially presenting as a kind of assumption based on your pre-existing bias that you don't like God, you think he's evil. Which is fine, but like I say, you can't present that as a logical argument when it is so heavily influenced by your own bias, and you can't even come up with one example of it. And I can prove with my dice here that you don't really understand what random means in relation to your own proposition. So that's the end of this. Please feel free to reply to me in a comment or make a video like I'm doing. Like I say, I'm happy to have these conversations. I really am happy to have these conversations, because I think when you think this through to its conclusion, my friend, you are going to find out, A, God does not kill people at random, and neither does nature. So if that's your only reason for saying God's evil, you will no longer say it. Like, not because I've told you or convinced you, you will decide with your own logic that random occurrences are not what you've described there, and therefore you can't say God's evil because of that. And then you will find out what I'm saying to be the case, is that you don't like God, you think he's evil based on a pre-existing bias and an assumed example in your head which never really happened. Whereas what I'm saying about being able to prove that God is good and not evil is referenced in the Bible. If you don't believe that God's real, his character described in the classical scriptures is good, he doesn't randomly kill people. And if you listen to guys like me, I can physically, personally testify that my experiences of meeting God, speaking to God, experiencing God's behaviour, I have physically testified, and I will testify, that God is good and not evil. So that's the end of this video. Hope you enjoyed that and you learnt something. Like I say, feel free to carry on the discussion and present other points, or if you have other points you can bring up, other arguments against God, please present those. And I just ask that you present one point at a time per comment and try and keep your comments short like you have been doing. And once we get to a conclusion, if you are right, I will accept. If you get it right and I turn out to be logically wrong, I will accept and I will admit that you win, and I'll make it, like I promised before, I will make a video saying this guy won this argument. But on the other hand, if I can prove you to be logically wrong, or if you retract your argument altogether so that you never made it, that will also go in a video, and I expect that you will have the dignity and the honour to accept it, not argue down a black hole, which I'm not assuming you're going to do, but many atheists do that because they just cannot accept losing to a Christian, despite that it's fair. So that's all for now. God bless you all. Have a lovely day, and I'll see you lovely people in the next one. Bye now. So in conclusion, at the very least, no, we cannot say that God is evil because of random occurrences of death in nature. We can't even say that random deaths in nature even happen at all. There was no example given. So that's all for now. God bless you all. Have a lovely day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.